Welcome everyone to the session of Neville Goddard, The Law and the Promise. This is session number 6 of 12. Now, for those of you that would like to join in with your own books, we're on chapter 8 tonight, and it's through the Looking Glass chapter. Okay, so how this goes, for those of you that haven't been here before, everything we do in this session, think of it from the point of view of how do I apply this to my current circumstances? Because obviously we want to learn Neville so that we can get relief, and we want to learn Neville so that we can move ourselves towards wanted and desired outcomes rather than whatever we've got going on right now that's causing us some disturbance. Now, to keep the call nice and quiet, if you haven't muted yourself, just mute yourself so that it keeps the session clear, and use the little cartoon hand to put your hand up if you want to ask any questions as well. Now, this is interactive, so if you want to ask a question, feel free to put the hand up at any time, and we will break down the mechanics of Neville. So I'm going to start the reading today, and then I am going to call on Justice because she said that she was very happy to read. Justice, you will be up after me because I can see you in here. All good. So through the looking glass, a man that looks on glass, on it may stay his eye, or if he pleaseth, through it pass, and then the heaven espy. George Herbert. Objects to be perceived must first penetrate in some manner in our brain, but we are not, because of this, interlocked with our environment. Okay, although normally consciousness is focused on the senses and is usually restricted to them, it is possible for man to pass through his sense fixation into an imaginal structure, into any imaginal structure which he conceives, and so fully occupy it that it is more alive and more responsive than that on that which his senses stay his eye. Now, what the heck is Neville talking about? He's talking about that when we live life, we are fixated on what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch. We're very much engaging in the 3D world through our senses. That's what makes us human. However, when you start to know and you start to work on, as Neville is very much fixated on, imagination creates reality. If you can stay your eye, meaning your internal imaginal eye, fixate your eye on that which you seek, so you're doing the internal work, then it can become more responsive. So we live our lives very much, until we start to do this work, in a reactive manner. This happens, we react. Our boss says this, we react. Our specific person doesn't contact us, we react. We have a diagnosis from a doctor, we go home and we react. So it is very much that we think that our external worlds, the external world affects our mood, our emotion, our mental state, but very much it can become the opposite. Meaning you don't create this constant state of reacting to things, but you start to get good at becoming someone who creates through what I call pre-paving. You focus on desired outcomes, and you project out that state. And this is where the law of projection comes in. Neville talks a lot about the law of assumption. We assume certain things, we imagine certain things, then that goes out as energy, we project that out, and then from that projection, we get the evidence through the law of attraction. The law of attraction brings us back the evidence. So whatever you can stay his eye, as Neville talks about, meaning your internal eye fixated, focused on what you desire, then your life becomes something that is responding to you. So you become someone who creates and the world responds, rather than someone who's reacting to everything that's happening. okay, which is much more enjoyable. Now, if this were not true, man would be an automaton reflecting life, never affecting it. Man who is all imagination is not tenant to the brain, but landlord. Okay, he needs not rest content with the appearance of things. He can go beyond perceptual to conceptual awareness. Now, again, Neville uses a lot of words, but basically it is what I just described. You become someone who sets the tone, and then the external shows you evidence rather than the evidence outside, because you didn't realize it was connected to what you think and what you feel. And then you're constantly reacting to what that person said, what happened there. You are in a state of feeling like a victim. Okay, so this is, as he said, you become the landlord, not the tenant in the mind. Okay, so this ability to pass through the mechanical reflective structure of the senses is the most important discovery man can make. Okay, so once you know this, it's phenomenal. Once you apply it, it's off the Richter scale amazing. Okay, it is where your life can transform. You can transform the most difficult, unbelievably challenging situations, because you understand that if something shows up on the outside in front of you, you go, okay, if that's in front of me, what have I got going on that I need to correct, fix, imagine in a different way, and deal with my emotions about? Okay, so it reveals man as a center of imagining with powers of intervention, which enable him to alter the course of observed events. Now, what are you living right now that is causing you uncomfortability or emotionally affecting you? If you knew that you could apply Neville's teachings to alter the course of observed events that you're living right now, moving from success to success through a series of mental transformations within yourself, wouldn't that be a wonderful way to break free? Because I know every single one of you on some level is dealing with something. It's part of being human. But there's the let's complain about it, talk to our friends about it, or go out and drink over it, go out and do something to ourselves that isn't self-loving. And a lot of that involves addictions. What if I didn't do any of those things? And I used, as he says here, the attention, the spearhead of imagining. Attention, it's where you put your attention, where you put your focus, where you put your concentration. May be either attracted from without, as his senses stays his eye, or directed from within if he pleases. And through the senses passes into the wish fulfilled. So let's just go over that and break that down. You've got attention as the most important thing. So your attention is either on something that's disturbing you or something that you would like. We tend to go between the two. I feel upset about how it is and I don't like it this way, or I love this, I'm so grateful that this is how this is. So when you're getting the, I'm not really happy with this and this is bugging me, if you bring your attention and your awareness to the desired state, which is usually happiness, feeling relief, feeling free, feeling loved, feeling content, feeling excited, feeling happy to get out of bed in the morning because you love your job. If you can do that and get better at that, because it is a skill, and stay his eye, which means you keep your focus, your imaginal eye on the desired outcome, you pass through the senses, meaning you disengage from, I'm seeing that and that's causing me to feel uncomfortable. I'm hearing that and that's bothering me. I don't love you. I don't want to be with you. I don't want you to work here. We picked somebody else over you. Thank you very much. But you're not really what we want. Whatever it is, you heard something, you saw something, and then you infected yourself with the emotional negative response. What if you could hold, as Neville says, stay your eye, meaning you hold your attention on the thing desired, and then from that, pass into the wish fulfilled. Okay, so to move from perceptual awareness, or things as they seem, to conceptual awareness, as things as they ought to be, we imagine as vivid and as lifelike a representation as possible of what we would see, hear, and do were we physically present, with the end result that you would prefer. Okay, so you'd be physically experiencing things as they ought to be and imaginatively participating in that scene. So before I read the following story, RD, did you want to ask something? We're on Dawn. Before I go forward, we are on chapter 8, Through the Looking Glass, for those of you that have hopped in a bit after we started. Yes, RD?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So, yeah, I have a question for you. And even I had like wrote few thoughts, which I think a lot, and I just want to let go of it as it triggers me. So it's about a specific person, and right now he's dating someone. It's been almost a year, maybe. So,
Okay.
yeah. So the thing is, recently I decided that I'll move on, but I'm still holding on to him energetically, and I want to be free from this like relationship, the attachment I hold towards him. So I want to let go of that, but it's not happening. So this is the first thing, the first thought.
Okay. Let me
Yeah.
go through one thing at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
When we struggle to let go of someone, you got to ask yourself, what is it that I am thinking about that person? Now, if you're thinking thoughts of, I still want to be with them, or I don't want to be with them and I want to let go, which would you say you've got going, RD?
The second one. Actually,
I still
both,
want.
but yeah, the both thoughts I'm thinking.
Okay. All right.
I'm confused.
So
I just need clarity on it.
well, why, let me ask you this. What was it that you felt that you had when you were with him that you don't have now?
Can you just repeat once again?
Yes. What do you think you had with him, if you've been with him, that you do not have now?
Connection.
Okay. Connection to what?
Connection to maybe it's difficult to answer actually. But
Yes.
when I worked with him, it was really good. The relationship was smooth. It was really smooth. We understand each other, and it wasn't difficult actually. It was, I don't know actually. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, did you feel more love when you were with him than when you were alone?
Yes.
Okay. So what that tells you is that you think that love is still over there. And that's why it's difficult to let go of someone, because we think that I felt more loved when I was with that person. But really, it's when I'm with him, I feel more loved than when I am alone. But what that tells you about you is that you're not yet good at generating love on your own. You think that being with someone is what creates the feeling of love. But the thing is, when you were with him, you felt love, and that came up within you towards him. So the love was active in you and you made him the object of your attention, you see.
Okay, but
So,
what if you
yes.
think that, like I said, that he's dating someone? I'm just hoping that they should break up, but I'm also not expecting him to come back to me because it won't work. And even my feelings towards him has changed. So
Okay.
what, yeah,
In terms of your feelings have changed in what way?
I don't feel the love I used to feel towards him before. It has changed. I mean,
Because there's another person, or
because he has maybe has got intimated with, like, physical intimation with someone, maybe because I don't know, yeah, because we had really like on and off relationship. It was really difficult for me to
okay.
be in it, and because of the second reason, like both the reasons, like I was really struggling, and
Yes.
so I, like, I tried a lot, but then after a certain period of time, I was exhausted. I tried my best, but it just didn't work out. So then I guess the feelings just changed. But I still feel that maybe I want him, but I just don't want the relationship. But it won't work. These thoughts I'm thinking.
Okay. So you loved him when he was with you, but now that he's not with you, the love has changed.
Mm,
Is that right?
maybe,
Okay.
maybe.
I'm trying to get a bit more clarity about what you're telling me.
Yeah, even I'm not sure actually, but these are the thoughts I think.
Yeah. I would probably get clear about why has my love changed, because we can still love someone even when they're not with us. You know, we can practice radiating love out irregardless of whether they're with us or not. But of course, sometimes when someone moves on to someone else, that's more challenging. It is. But it's getting clear about, okay, where am I at and what is it that I think I want? And once you get clear with those two things, and that might not be something that comes straight away. I think sometimes clarity is one of the most difficult things.
It is.
Sorry, Ignis, I would like to interrupt because this conversation is happening and I had gone through the same situation. So, can I give my input in this situation?
Yeah, who am I talking to? I can't see who it is.
Uh, my name is Ipshita, ma'am. Actually, hello.
Oh, I thought that's okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So actually, I was dealing with the same kind of situation few years ago, and
Okay.
only during that phase I came across your channel, and it really helped me. Like you have really helped me in so many ways over the years. Like I came across your channel in 2018, so I would like to give my input. Like, as she's saying that now she doesn't feel the same love as she used to feel. So, it would be like ego. Like, uh, she doesn't love him anymore. And I used to feel the same for my specific person because I was also struggling because of on and off relationship, and he was also with someone else, and initially I tried a lot. I was dealing with heartbreak and I was struggling, but after a point of time I realized that it was not worth to be with him. So my love changed over the time and over the years. But yeah, on the other hand, my ego wanted, like, I wanted, like, he claims me. On one hand, I didn't love him. I just wanted that he comes back to me because of my ego.
Okay.
Yes, but now over so many years, I don't feel the same because of Ho'oponopono technique that you taught, and even self love meditations that you have taught. So
Mm-hmm.
because of all those reasons, I don't feel anything towards my specific person. He's no more my specific person anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, I have forgiven him. At times I go through few emotions, but it's once in a while. And now I am looking towards my future in a good
L-
way. So maybe that's where this girl is, RD is struggling. So I hope so she gets some clarity.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And it is getting clarity is, a big part of this. The universe loves clarity, but it's like sometimes we're not clear because we're upset, we're brokenhearted, we feel depressed, we feel anxious, and that can cloud the clarity. So, yeah, thank
And
you for sharing.
I
Yeah,
also
it
have
was
a quiet.
very helpful.
What's that?
It was
Uh,
very helpful. I guess it could be my ego, maybe.
Oh, okay, RD, good. Okay. That's great. I mean, sometimes it is challenging to see, is it the ego or is it my interpretation that love is over there and I want to get the love from over there? Sometimes it's not always the same thing. So,
Okay, and even if I want like more clarity, what can I do about it?
I would sit down in meditation. There's a meditation I did ages ago, and it's called asking questions to get answers. If someone can look that up and put it in the chat while I'm put the word answers and questions and meditation, and you should find there's only one, so it should be easy to find. If someone can put it up, have a quick look on, if you just put my name into YouTube and it'll take you to whichever channel it is. I think it's a meditation channel, but I'm not 100% sure, but it should bring it up. I would try that, because then that will be where you sit in meditation, you ask questions, and then you sit and you contemplate and ponder the question. And it's just between you and source. And I think that's always a good place to start. Make the time to do that.
Okay. And
ma'am,
the next one is uh, like I just think like I think that like I'm moving on right now, but I wish that you know if, uh, like I wish that if I could have this wonderful relationship with him like ahead, like in future.
Okay.
This is the first. This is also a thought, and the next one is maybe someone has took my place in his heart, and the last one is he's a really good person, and I really loved him like in the past, but thinking about him like I'm moving on right now, so I won't be able to see him in future or talk to him or anything, like talk to him or laugh or anything.
Mm.
So these are the three thoughts.
Okay, so what's your question to me?
How to also let go of this.
I
Is this
think,
is this related to the question I asked earlier? Like, how can I let, like, energetically, I'm still holding on to him?
yeah.
Like, is it connecting?
Well, I think when you're holding on to someone, like there's holding on in a positive way because you really loved and enjoyed the person. And when you think about them, that makes you feel good. But there's also the negative of holding on to someone and it causes you not very good emotion, pain, hurt, anxiety, feeling second best, feeling not good enough. So you've got to ask yourself, which type of holding on am I doing? And is it causing me any pain? Is it causing me any negative emotions? So if it's not, then no problem. But if it's bothering you and you would like to let go, which it sounds like you do, I would practice, as was suggested, the Ho'oponopono and the self-love meditations. Because how do you let go of something? You put your full focus elsewhere.
Okay.
And that's how you stop watering the plant of not letting go of I mean, it can be obsession, or it can be that you just think about them too much, but it's not obsession, but it's still too much for you because it's affecting your work or it's affecting you know,
No,
when you
it's not affecting my work, but I
Good.
do feel it's kind of attachment I have towards him.
okay.
Only.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would practice, you know what there is, RD, if you go to my channel, the main one, there's a Ho'oponopono playlist. I would work through that playlist because I'm reading out of a little book, the Ho'oponopono book. And then at the end of each little short chapter, there's an exercise, and the exercise is usually to do with you and somebody else. And it's a way to clear and let go of whatever you've still got going on with another human being.
Okay.
Okay, I would try
Yeah.
that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.
And yeah, thanks to Ipshita, I guess. Yeah, she also like, I guess it is also ego.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. Okay, I can see there's still a few people with their hands up, but I'm going to read a bit more and I will come back to you in a minute. Now, I'm going to read this story. The following story tells of one who went through the glass and broke the chains that bound her. Okay, so when I read this again, think about the mechanics of the story. The story might be slightly different to what you're trying to manifest, but say to yourself, how do I apply the mechanics and the lessons learned by this person that wrote the story? How do I apply the lessons? How do I apply the Neville teachings to my particular situation? 2 years ago, I was taken to hospital with a serious blood clot, which apparently had affected the entire vascular system, causing hardening of the arteries and arthritis. A nerve in my head was damaged and my thyroid enlarged. Doctors could not agree on the cause of the condition, and all their treatments were completely ineffective. I was forced to give up my every enjoyable activity and remain in bed most of the time. My body from hip to toes felt as if it was encased and bound by tight wires. And I couldn't put my feet on the floor without wearing heavy hip-length elastic stockings. I knew something about your teaching and I tried very hard to apply what I heard, but as my condition grew worse, I could no longer attend any of your lectures. My despondency grew deeper. One day, a friend sent me a postcard picturing the scene of a lovely beach on the ocean. The picture was so beautiful. I looked and looked at it and began to remember past summer days at the seashore with my parents. For a moment, the postcard picture seemed to become animated and flooding memories of myself running free on the beach, filling my mind. I felt the impact of my bare feet against the hard, wet sand, and I felt the icy water running over my toes and heard the crash of waves breaking on the shore. This imaginal activity was so satisfying to me as I laid in my bed, and I continued to imagine this wonderful scene day after day for about 1 week. One morning, I moved from my bed to a couch and had started to sit up when I was seized with such an excruciating pain. My entire body became paralyzed. I couldn't neither sit up or lie down. This terrible pain lasted for more than a full minute, but when it stopped, I was free. It seemed as if all the wires binding my legs had been cut. One moment I was bound, the next moment I was free. Not by degrees, but instantly. VH. We walk by faith, not by sight. When we walk by sight, we know our way by objects which our eyes see. When we walk by faith, we order our life by scenes and actions which only imagination sees. So this woman fixating on this postcard, it wasn't just a postcard. It was her going back to childhood memories of feeling free, of running, of feeling sand between her toes. So she could feel, she activated quite a few of the senses in this particular story. She felt herself running free. So the feeling of freedom. She felt the bare feet against the hard sand. Touch. She saw, obviously, the ocean. She could smell the ocean. She felt the icy water running between her toes. And she felt the waves breaking on. She heard the waves crashing on the shore. So she activated a lot of the senses just by seeing this one picture, and she did it over and over again. And that was enough. She rose up. You have to rise up in your focus. You have to rise up in what you think about your situation. So for that time, she pulled her attention away from the pain, away from the physical body, and she reinfected herself with the joy of childhood memories. I think going back to childhood memories is easier than trying to create new memories that you've never experienced, because you will already have a whole feeling, whether you remember it was summer, winter, dark or daytime, whether you remembered it was summer or winter, whether you remembered it was you were wearing certain clothes, what other people were doing. All of that detail is automatically there if it was a memory. So although we can create brand new memories and create brand new imaginal scenes, I think pulling from old scenes, if by chance you've been able to experience something, in this case, the woman wanted to be free because she was very physically bound up and restricted. So her body was restricted, but she used her mind to think of freedom and running. And running is such a great way to feel free. So she imagined running free on the beach, and then she became free in the physical body. The body responds to the mind. So, Nisha, I'm going to answer your question.
Hi, Agnes. I feel like I've almost forgotten my question. However, I can.
That's okay.
Classic ADHD there. I mean, I suppose my question is, and I don't know if this comes back to my own sort of limitations in my own life, because when I first started doing this work, it felt like anything was possible. And I don't know whether it's kind of got to the point where I kind of question my own power as a person, but I do sometimes question, like, at what point am I being a little bit delusional? Because I can't ignore everything that happens in the 3D, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I guess that's my question. Like, when do I know that, like, I'm like, at what point, like, you know, that, for example, like you said, if someone goes to the doctors and gets a diagnosis, for instance, it's like, how can you not react to that?
Well, I don't think it takes a pretty strong mind not to react to a diagnosis, especially if it's pretty negative. However, I mean, I remember when I had a tumor and when I had a very large fibroid about the size of a grapefruit, and they said to me, you need to get operated. I walked out and I remember thinking, no, I'm not doing that. I need to work out what I've done to myself mentally, emotionally, with food, and I'm going to dissolve this. But I can't say to you, Nisha, I didn't have a reaction. I did. So I think you take the hit, you feel the emotional drop, and then you go home and you go, okay, hang on a minute. Let me just think about this. If my body's created this, then my body can dissolve this. The doctor's just giving me a clear photograph, a snapshot of where I am right today. But it's not a photograph, because really, nothing's set in stone. It's more like a video. A photograph just gives you 1 second of a person's life, and he's just given me 1 second of where my health is in regards to these two conditions that I had at that time. So I thought, okay, the doctor doesn't know my ability to heal. My doctor doesn't know that I'm actually in charge of my body, not him. And whatever he tells me, that's his opinion, and thank you for the diagnosis, but I'm going to be doing this my way. So, I mean, it does take some mental fortitude to override what someone has said, especially when you think they're a professional. But the thing is, no one knows your ability to heal yourself better than you, because you know what you've been through more than anyone has. You know more than even the doctor does. He doesn't know what your childhood was like. He doesn't know what you've been through. He doesn't know what you can do to heal yourself. He doesn't know how you can improve your diet. And sadly, they don't make those suggestions. So it's like, okay, thank you for the diagnoses. And if you have a relationship that's saying to you, I don't want to be with you, I want to be with someone else, again, thank you for the diagnoses, Now I'm going to go and do some work on myself, because if that's in front of me, what have I still got going on within me that I need to dissolve, reprogram? Inner child, what do you need to let go of? Who does this remind me of from the past? You know, like if you're seeing something in front of you that's upsetting you, who does this remind me of? Is it my sister? Is it my mother, my father, my teacher, my cousin? You know, who does this remind me of from childhood? Where did this begin? How far back does this go? And then you clear the old emotions. You go back to the root, because you got hit in the raw pink nerve today, but where does it go back to? And then once you clear that with inner child, I think meditations, inner child meditations, are the most powerful. If it's something that happened in adulthood, I would use the spotlight meditation, and really just, you can find all those on my channel for free, and you can do the work quietly on your own. So it really is just a journey of saying, okay, there's my diagnoses. Not really happy with that. Okay, where do I need to go mentally and emotionally to get away from that? And then you do the work. And a big part of it, I find the two things that really handbrake people the most in all subjects is the inner child is ruling the roost, because you haven't processed or let go of a lot of the stuff from that time. And your body's like a suitcase and it's still holding on to that stuff. And the second thing is the self-love isn't good. If you can correct those two things, then you're well on your way to dissolving a lot of the past issues that are now reoccurring in your adult life.
Oh, okay. So would you say that because of those issues, sometimes we attract, like, would you say these things attract diseases? I don't know, like, the right way to.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think, you know, from 30 years worth of looking at this stuff from all angles and looking at Louise Hay and Neville and Florence Scovel-Shinn and Joseph Murphy and on the list goes, whenever we end up with a health condition, unless I think the exception would be, say you live near some power lines and then you ended up with cancer, and that was environmental. It came from what the government did in your country, in your community, in your street, and you just happen to be living there. You know, there's many stories of people that there's clusters of cancers and clusters of tumors and certain things in people that have lived near these particular power lines, or people that worked with asbestos, or people that were in mines, you know, people that had jobs that they got infected with something. Now, I'm not talking about those because that's external, that's come in and it's affected the body. The other, I think 80% is emotions that have been layered upon layered upon layered since childhood. And eventually, whether you get it in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or later, the accumulation of your repetitive thought processes that have accumulated resentment about them, that situation, that person, that culture, that company, whatever it is, you have marinated yourself in it so much for so long that your body has now taken the impact of it. So cancer and resentment usually go together hand in hand.
That's definitely reason to. If I've got a big enough why, then I always find that, you know, like when you've got that motivation, like that's not something that anyone wants, really, is it? So
no,
yeah, to do the work.
Do the work before it gets bad. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we get little warning signs along the way, Misha, and then we go, you know, like you might get sick, or you might get a really bad flu, or you might get chronic fatigue, or you might get, you know, you've broken your ankle falling down the stairs or whatever, but you haven't learned the lesson that was telling you. And then you create something worse the next time around. So it gets worse if you don't pay attention, unfortunately. If you keep doing the same trajectory with your emotions, as in, you know, resenting resentment, hurt, guilt, pain, anger, all those emotions which are compressed in the body for extended periods of time, eventually the body has a blowout somewhere.
Wow, thank you.
Mm.
Thanks so much.
No worries. Justice, would you like to do a little bit of reading, lovey?
Sure. I actually got distracted, so I'm not really sure where we're at right now.
No problem. Let me see.
Is it when we walk by sight, we know our way?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. When we walk by sight, we know our way by objects which our eyes see. When we walk by faith, we order our life by scenes and actions which only imagination sees. Man perceives by the eye of imagination or by sense, but two mental attitudes to perception are possible. The creative imaginative effort, which meets with the imaginative response, or the unimaginative staying of the eye, which merely reflects. Man has within him the principle of life and the principle of death. One is the imagination building its imaginal structures out of the generous streams of fancy. The other is the imagination building its imaginal structures from images reflected by the chill wind of fact. One creates, the other perpetuates. Man must adopt either the way of faith or the way of sight. To the extent that man builds from dreams of fancy, he is alive, and therefore the development of the faculty to pass through the reflective glass of the senses is an increase of life. It follows that restricting the imagination by staying the eye on the reflective glass of the senses is a reduction of life. What is that? The spacious.
Okay. I might just try. I mean, that bit was a
Okay.
bit like Neville wordy, wasn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So let's break it down into 2023 English. He's talking about there's either the sense like as in what this using the senses, or the eye of imagination. So you're either doing it in one way or the other. Okay. How you perceive things. Okay. So you've got two mental attitudes, and he's talking about when effort, as in the effort that you make in using the imaginal faculty, the imaginative response, as in staying the eye, meaning that you're holding your concentration, really. Okay. So it gets reflected back to you. So it will show you, like live streaming, how well you're doing with this. Okay. All you got to do is see what you are living right now to see how well you're doing with this. Have I been able to stay my eye, hold my concentration, hold my focus, irregardless of what's going on out there, on the desired end result? Now, we are human. We're going to have moments where we can do that well. And other times you've had a long day at work, or something's happened to someone in your family and you get emotionally disturbed. This is more challenging, but it's progress, not perfection. Okay. You do your best, and you try to do this when you have moments of feeling good. And, you know, Neville talks about, there's stories in Neville where he's on the phone. Someone rings him and says, Neville, blah, 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 here's my problem. And, you know, Neville gives him the person a bit of advice. But what he does is, when the person hangs the phone up, Neville is often still sitting on the phone, not sitting on the phone, but he's on the phone, standing in the hallway. And he closes his eyes. And basically what he does in that next 5 minutes is he revises the person's problem into the solution, what he knows the person would have wanted to receive. So he does it on a loop. And then when he feels it's complete, he puts the phone down. So Neville would often practice staying of the eye on the desired outcome for people that would ring him. Now, we know that that's what Jesus did. He held people in a state of health when they had leprosy. So it's using you go, okay, I'm going to use my eyes to see. My eyes see something unwanted. I can feel that that's not a preference. That's not a good outcome. That's not a good scenario for me or someone else. And now, because I know how to use my mind and I know how to practice staying of the eye, because the outside is just reflecting where my focus is, where my staying of the eye is, where my attention is. So if you can see what he's talking about here, even though it's really worded in a, I think, fairly complicated way, he's saying you can go one way or the other. You can go the internal way of faith, or you can go the way of sight. Now, some people find faith easier to just believe and to feel the feeling, because belief and faith really are more about feeling. Whereas if you use what he said here, or the way of sight, sight is you see someone before you who's complaining about their husband, wife, and you go, okay, I've just walked away from them. Let me just sit on this little park bench for 5 minutes, and I'm going to imagine for them that they say, my goodness, my relationship is just transformed, and it is in the best state it's ever been. And you hear the person's voice say that over and over and over. So you're doing a revision on their behalf. So you can choose which way you prefer to do things. I think sometimes you're led to do the faith way, and other times you're led to do the sight way. Both of them work. And sometimes some people are more sight focused and other people are more feeling focused. So use whatever strengths you have. If you don't know, try a bit of each and see which one feels better for you. Okay, now, regularly, I can't see the full, you have put your hand up. I can't see the full name because it's quite long.
Hi, Anya. I think she's not, or he or she is not able to use her microphone, so I volunteered to.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Let me just go back to the chat here so I can read
Yes.
out.
Thank you, because I don't check the chat because I don't have time. So yes,
Okay.
feel free to go ahead.
It's a two-parter. The first part is, what should one do in a potentially triggering situation, and how can you go within?
Okay, all right, I can see the question here. What should one do in a potentially triggering situation? Take time out. Since Neville says, look within, what should one do when you can't look within in a chaotic situation? Well,
And, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm just going to second part of the question before I mute myself again. It's just a little further down the chat. The second part is, how to remove someone permanently from my life when they are chaotic and abusive.
Okay, well, firstly, I would verbalize some boundaries. If they don't respect your boundaries, I would remove myself fully from them and not see them. I don't know any details whether this is someone you live with. That's a little bit more difficult. It's a bit hard for me to answer the question without knowing a bit more detail, but remember, it's working on the self and getting to the place where you feel free of this person. So I would practice, I am free. I would go for walks in the park and practice that affirmation, because the energy of freedom is going to disengage you from the engagement with someone who is either suffocating, annoying, nasty, and all of that. Also, I would look at, what do I project out in regards to what I think about this person? So when we have people around us that are nasty, abusive, sometimes there is substances involved, you've got to say, okay, I don't want to be around this. I am going to get stronger boundaries, and I'm going to dissolve the part of me that feels like a victim, because victims attract perpetrators. So if you feel like a victim, a big part of that is working on feeling secure, feeling strong, supported, safe. You've got to practice some of those, but you've also got to back it up, I think, with dialogue on the outside. So, you know, if someone is doing that, you have to look at how good are my boundaries. And maybe that's something you need to learn, is to speak up as well as doing the internal work. Because self-love is also self-respect and not allowing someone to treat you that way. I don't know the details, as I said. If someone's living in your house, that's a bit more difficult. If you're dependent on them financially, you know, that's a whole other can of worms. Needing to remove yourself, find your own work, and get unhooked from them financially. But if that's not the case, then it's a bit easier. So again, always do the internal work and get yourself out of feeling like a victim. I am secure. I am good enough. I am worthy. I am important. I matter, because all of this stuff makes you feel like you don't matter, you're not important, and you're being victimized. So I think it's working on those. That's what I would suggest. Okay. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Now, I am going to do a little bit more reading. Actually, Justice, do you want to continue?
I can continue.
I'm enjoying listening to you.
Awesome. The specious surface of fact reflects rather than discloses, deflecting the eye of imagination from the truth that sets man free. The eye of imagination, if not deflected, looks on what ought to be there, not what is. However, familiar the scene on which sight rests. The eye of imagination could gaze on one never before witnessed. It is this eye of imagination, only this, that can free us from the sense fixation of outer things, which completely dominates our ordinary existence and keeps us looking on the reflective glass of facts. It is possible to pass from thinking of to thinking from, but the crucial matter of is thinking from, i.e. experiencing the state for that experience means unification, whereas in thinking of there is always subject and object, the thinking individual and the thing thought of.
Okay, let's talk a bit about that before we go into that, because the next section's really good as well. So let's just break that down for a second. Now, he's talking about the eye of imagination. Okay, and gazing on one never before witnessed, meaning the thing that you feel that you would like to have, just because you haven't experienced it before, just because you haven't attracted it yet, just because you haven't lived it yet, doesn't mean that you can't be in that experience. So the eye of imagination, using imagination creates reality. That's how you hop into a desired witnessing of what you want. Okay, so it can free you from your present disturbance, or what you're living that you don't enjoy, that's not working, etc., etc. So the eye of imagination is the first step that frees us from the sense fixation. So you get fixated on, they're not doing this, they didn't want me for the job, they didn't call me for an interview. So you separate yourself. When you have those thoughts, you separate yourself from your desire. So he talks about living from something rather than thinking of something. How do you live from something? You live from something by imagining, if I had that right now, how would I feel at this moment? If you had that amazing relationship, how would you feel right now? You'd feel really loved. You'd feel secure. You'd feel happy. You'd feel connected. You'd feel, oh, I love how good this feels. But if you're thinking of, oh, that person hasn't called me and I'm here sitting on my couch on a Saturday night and I'm watching Netflix on my own and I feel lonely, you've separated yourself. You've used the eye of imagination to hop into the problem, separate you from the thing you want, and you've now pushed it away from you in that moment. Okay, but that's all right. Once you understand how you do that, once you know how you do that, then you will know how to do the opposite side of the coin, which is thinking from. You've got to learn to think from. Unification, it's you're fusing yourself with, I've got this, I have this. Oh, I love this. And you are engaging in imaginal scenes that generate that emotion in your body. You have your thought through the attention, as he calls it, the spearhead, and then that attention in your mind then goes and it sends an emotion down into the body. That emotion in the body is what goes out with the law of projection. The law of projection fuses you with the end result, and then poof, you are no longer separating yourself from having what you want, and you're no longer seeing it as, I need to get that to be happy. You're going, I am happy because I think I know how to get there. And I'm right now, I am there. And then whoosh, it comes in. So Neville talks a lot about thinking of and thinking from. You need to improve your thinking from by using your mind to maneuver through imaginal scenes where you are in it. And that again takes practice, but it's, you don't have to do it perfectly. And it's just doing it when you can on the topic that's important to you, and practice it. And it's like you do it, you let it go. You do it, you let it go. And you put your full attention elsewhere. When you're at work, when you're with friends, when you're with family, when you're sleeping, you go to sleep, you let it go. You drop into the states akin to sleep by imagining it, plant the seeds, and then they get fertilized as you sleep. So hopefully with whatever you're going through today, you can start to apply this living from it more and more, create a tight, clear, imaginal scene, and then do it half a dozen times on a loop, and then slide into sleep with it. Okay, Justice, do you want to read the last bit of the self-abandonment bit?
Sure. Self-abandonment, that is the secret. We have to abandon ourselves to the state in our love for the state, and in doing, live the life of the state and no more our present state. Imagination seizes upon the life of the state and gives itself to the expression of the life of that state. Do you want me to go on? To the
I will say, I'll just say, the word self-abandonment is it's like you almost forget where you are. You're imagining something, and then all of a sudden you do it half a dozen times on a loop, and then you open your eyes and you go, oh my God, I forgot where I was. That's how you know you've hit self-abandonment. That's how you know you've lived from it, because you almost come out and you get a bit of a shock. Oh my God, I'm in my living room. Oh, wow. Like you almost, you get so far down the rabbit hole that you get that, like when you're on the train and you fall asleep, and then all of a sudden you get a bump or there's an announcement, and you go, oh my God, where am I? It's that kind of feeling. So you can't force self-abandonment. I think practicing it, eventually you slide into it more easily. And that's the secret. Self-abandonment is to fuse yourself into it. And just so, it's like you're in a real video game, and you're engaging in stepping into every room and moving around, and you're looking out the eyes of the character. You are the character. This is the game of life. So the self-abandonment is a big, big, big part of Neville's teachings. Okay, Jesset, let's do one more question.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes. So my question is about the emotional aspect of this two-parter. We talked about how we can do this through sight, visioning.
Yes.
And it's amazing. We can revise for other people. We're learning now. Also, of course, faith and feeling. So a lot of us want to, or we're very clear about what we want to change, but we just don't know how. The getting from A to Z, at least that's I'm speaking for myself. So I'll give an example, because I think that always helps understand the question. The question is probably more, I'm very good at the visual. I can imagine something and it feels real in seconds. But
Okay.
turning the emotional part of it on sometimes is difficult because I am very aware that that's not what's going on in reality. For example, I have someone that I've known for 7 years who recently lied to me, has never lied to me, and it really broke the trust.
Yeah.
What I've got to do, and anyone could apply this, I don't know what, for a situation that they're going through. The opposite of what he says to do is to not focus on that. So I've done the imaginal acts of imagining an apology or a text message or a phone, whatever, those things. But the emotional back and forth of 1 minute, it's like, all right, this is in God's hands. This is in source hands. It's going to work itself out. All is well. I believe it's going to be fine. Ignoring the fact that he's ignoring me, for example, even though he's the one that was sort of the person that wasn't honest, ignoring the lie, imagining trust, then emotionally swinging and ping-ponging back to the reality just sort of hits you in the face like, man, is this the end of an era? Is this the end of a friendship? Is this the end of everything? How can the trust ever be built? How can you ever grow if you don't trust the person? So that's just an example. We could apply it to, you don't have to answer that particular example, but in general, from black to white, so to speak, going from not well to well. I know sometimes we can do baby steps, but practical ways of moving that situation around that feels like a mountain, but trying to see the other side of it, the good, the vision, holding the course that things can change. Absolutely, I believe they can. But it's that in-between period where you see no movement and the emotions really take over, that reining that in and holding the focus, any way to get there quickly for everyone everyone's got their own situation, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question. I don't think just hopping into living in the end I think that's half of the nut. Neville doesn't really talk about childhood stuff. He doesn't really talk about self-love per se. He talks about states, imagination creates reality, feeling is the secret, et cetera, et cetera. I think Neville's work is excellent. However, we need to look at the part where he talks about everyone is us pushed out. So in the case of someone lying to you and they've never done that before, instead of going, they lied to me, I want an apology, I want a text for them to acknowledge what they did, which is hands on hips, self-righteousness. And I understand that because I've been lied to and I've been where I've wanted an apology myself. But when you really look more deeply at that whole scenario, if someone lies to you that you love, ask yourself the question, what did I have going on before that happened? And take responsibility. So when my husband lied to me and he was having an affair and he was having sex with men and I found out about it, yes, I had a reaction and I was you broke the trust in our marriage. However, when I look back after the shock of it was over, I had a fear of loss, a fear of abandonment, and a fear of being second best to somebody else. He was only acting out what I already had going on within me, and it dovetailed together, which means you don't need an apology. You don't need a text message. The forgiveness is not of them. It's of you because you weren't able to do any better than you did. So everyone as you pushed out is heavy duty, hardcore taking responsibility for what shows up in front of you. Not to blame yourself, but, my husband, I knew before he met me, he cheated on his last wife. He had sex with people that he worked with, clients, which was totally inappropriate. I knew that. Now, when I met him, we discussed those things and I was compassionate and understanding. But once we got married, my fears came to the surface and I was no longer able to hold the compassion and I couldn't hold the fears at bay. My distrust, my fear of betrayal was too strong because of my history. He didn't cause that. He can't cure that within me. So the whole thing wasn't about him apologizing for what he did. The whole thing was me seeing that all of this was created because of childhood stuff, and we dovetailed together, and it came to a crashing halt, because even though I had done some inner child work by that point, I hadn't done enough for that to not come back and hit me in the back of the head with a brick.
Sorry, thank you for answering that. I think I probably should have added this part on a little bit to give you a little more context. I apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't really want the apology for the lying. He actually tried to turn it around on me, and that was the part that was tough, because I know that when someone lies, they have their reasons, and people do it all the time. And I know I've been guilty of doing it even unintentionally before, and people make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it was more the blaming the lie on me bit it was very much like, I guess you would call gaslighting. People say that nowadays. That part is tough for me too, because I know my truth, and I know I know the truth, I know it in my heart and soul, and it's not about being right. But that part's really hard to revise. That part was the painful part, because when someone else does something, I totally understand that they have their own things to work out.
Yes.
And I don't think that's anything anyone should blame themselves for, like you were referring to your husband. But if your husband turned around and told you it was your fault that I did all these things, that would be like insult to injury. And I think that's a little bit more where
he did. Well, he did blame me.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
wow.
the whole thing was, you're not sexually interesting enough.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing was, luckily I laughed and said, well, my background's French, so I don't think that that's an issue. So I didn't take that one personally. However, it's the case, if someone's coming in and gaslighting you, really they're blaming you in a way, or refusing to acknowledge. So you go, okay, let me ask you one question. Who does that remind you of? Who in your past, your father, your brother, your uncle, who? And usually when it's a man that's done something that's affected you as a woman, it's usually a man in the past that this stuff began with. And for men, if the scenario is they're having issues with women, it's usually a woman from the past. Not always, but I find in the coaching I've done, about 85% is an exact match of the gender. So ask yourself, who has not taken responsibility for what they've done and gaslit me when I was perhaps, whether it's a child or a teenager? Who did I see that? Where did that begin?
Okay. So I'm going to sit with these questions, but because I don't have time to, personally.
Yeah.
But yeah. So you would go back to say, like,
I
okay,
would.
would. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. See, with me, when I looked at my husband was a sex addict. He couldn't control his sex addiction, according to him. He was recovering from alcohol I never even saw him drink. He had been at least 20 years in Alcoholics Anonymous when I met him, but he hadn't had any treatment for the sex addiction. So even though one addiction had been put down, the other addiction reared its head. But who did that remind me of? My father was a narcissist and a sex addict. So what happened? All my dad's stuff came and hit me between the eyes, because my father, the experiences that I saw as a child was that my father had a lot of affairs on my mom. I even had people telling me that they saw my father buying condoms at the corner store, and I went to school with the people that owned that corner shop. I mean, it was just a disaster. So there was shame. So the sex addiction was the common thread between my father and the resentment I felt as a teenager, and the shame of people in my neighborhood knowing what my father was doing, and it being everybody knowing and talking about it, and I didn't know, finding out about it years later. But the anger I had at my father and the distrust I had, how could you do that to my mother? I'm ashamed of you. That is horrible. You're married. And I lost total respect for him at that time. It's like that carried into the marriage. So it was my unresolved stuff around what happened with my father that dragged itself up in the marriage. And it was still kind of laying dormant there enough that when my husband did a few things, like go out and play music late at night, and then he didn't come home till really late, I'd be laying in bed going, what the hell's he doing? And the anguish and the fear and the, oh my God, what's going on? Is this, I wasn't consciously going, is this like dad? But the feeling place was familiar. It was like that time. So if you can look at, okay, what's going on now and where do I see any some familiarity in my childhood experience, pinpoint it maybe down to one or two people, do the inner child work on those situations that you remember where you had intense negative emotion, clear the body because it's like a suitcase and it's stored emotion that the inner child's never been able to release. It just shoved it down because, as Neville says, the past is still alive in us. And the today situation will echo the past. It's almost like a cookie cutter and it will replicate the exact same thing. So that's where I would start. That's where I would start.
Okay, and drop the imaginal scenes of the other, because I was doing a lot of peace and trust between us, and
yeah,
things working.
I think that's okay, but you're still icing a rotten cake if you've got a powder keg of stuff underneath.
Gotcha.
Like I think that stuff's good, but not right now. You got to put the horse before the carts, as they say. Do the old excavating, dig up the old bones, and then throw them out. Because we can't do imaginal scenes that Neville asks us to do sometimes because we keep defaulting back to old painful stuff. And that's why we go, oh God, I can't do this Neville stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because the inner child is saying, no, this is my story. You are not going to trust this person and the inner child jumps out the front and then takes the lead. And when it does that, that's old unresolved stuff. And that's why Neville says the past is still alive in us. What's going on today is triggering back that trajectory right back to that.
Gotcha. So this sort of part of looking glass is more for when we've already cleared those things out, then we can flip things around and revise once we've.
I think people start with this, and I think this is important, but I think Neville's stuff is one half of the nut, and this other stuff that we've just discussed here is the other half.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Fantastic.
Good question. Good question. That stuff's huge. It really is huge. And look, I've yet to meet anyone that hasn't got some skeleton in their closet with some family member, unless you had no family members and you were, for some reason not surrounded by family. Pretty much everyone I've ever met has got something from some family member. And rich or poor, gay or straight, black or white, young or old, we all have something to unpack and let go of emotionally. So would anyone else like to read? Thank you, Justice, for your reading, my lovely.
Welcome.
Nisha or Epsita, are your hands up to read or to ask a question?
I do have the book in front of me, so I'm quite happy to read if you.
Okay, Nisha, all right. And Epsita, were you wanting to ask a question or read?
Ma'am, ask a question.
Yes, go ahead. Nisha, just pause for 1 sec.
So,
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Oh, sorry, I've muted you by accident. Sorry. Go ahead. Where did you go? Yeah.
So I was initially in that situation when I told you, like I was struggling like few years ago. So after that, I have healed to a lot of extent, but now I resist love. Like I have got this commitment phobia. Like anyone comes in front of me or comes to be with me, comes to love me, before they try to commit, I just run away. And I would like to ask, like, how can I heal this situation? Because on one hand, crave for a relationship where I am loved and pampered and adored. But at the same time, I have got abandonment issues because since childhood, the people I have loved the most, be it friends or family members, they have always abandoned me in the most heartbreaking way. So I would like to know how I can heal this situation.
It really is just what we've been talking about. It's the inner child work and the self-love work. It's really those two things that I think are the most important. And also when you said being loved, pampered and adored, okay, that's a red flag for me, because all of those things are about you getting something from someone else. Okay, be careful with that, because that's still you looking for external love and reassurance and validation. And that's not someone's job to do that. That's a parent's job to do that. But remember, you don't want a child-parent dynamic in a relationship. You want two adults. So I know there's a lot of stuff on YouTube about that stuff. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of it. It's all setting people up to look for external reassurance and love. Okay? You don't go into a relationship, if you want a good one, looking for those things. You bring your security, you bring your love, you bring your own valued, wonderful self towards the it's what am I going to give to the relationship, not what am I looking for them to give to me. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Yeah, so be mindful of that, because that gets us into trouble. It gets us into trouble. It puts us in a child, codependent, look after me, I need rescuing. You don't want that, because you'll end up being treated like a child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have another doubt. Like, there's been for some time I am getting people who are like emotionally dependent on me. They just throw up their all emotional baggage upon me, and yes, I would like to help to some extent, but it is sometimes very exhausting because I have my own life and own issues, and I try to work out by myself. And but at the same time, when all these people they try to put their baggage upon me, it becomes very emotionally draining for me. So I am not able to understand why it's happening.
Because you don't have good boundaries.
Okay.
You have to learn to say, you're smart, you'll work it out, and you remove yourself. You can't take on, it's not your job to have to rescue everybody. I mean, it's nice to help people, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to learn to help ourselves and help people when we have enough energy on board. If you're getting drained, you're staying in those conversations and situations way too long, and you're not able to remove yourself. So it's learning the word, I need to go, you're smart, you'll work it out, and you leave people to work things out themselves. So that's more, again, not being a child, being an adult, saying what you need to say, and setting, when you've had enough, you say, look, I need to go now, I need to go and eat, or I need to go now, I hope you'll be okay. And you're caring, but you still remove yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. Nisha, have you got,
You'll have to.
oops, sorry, I muted you by mistake. I was trying to lower your hand.
I'm
Yeah.
crying now. You'll have to remind me whereabouts we got up to.
Okay, let me have a look. We read self-abandonment. Faith plus love is self-commission.
Okay. I don't like reading out loud, but I thought I'd put myself outside of my comfort zone. So.
Oh, well done. And look, if at any point you go, okay, that's enough now, just say. That's fine. No problem.
Faith plus love is self-commission. We can't commit ourselves to what we do not love. Never would you have made anything if you had not loved it. And to make the state alive, one must become it. I live, yet not I. God lives in me. and the life I now live in the flesh. I live by the faith of God who loved me and gave himself for me. God loved man. He's created and became man in faith, but this act of self-commission would transform the created into the creative. We must be imitators of God as dear children and commit ourselves to what we love as God who loved us committed himself to us. We must be the state to experience the state. The center of conscious imagining can be shifted, and what are now mere wishes, imaginal activities keyed low, brought into penetrative focus and entered. Entrance commits us to the state. The possibilities of such shifting of the center of imagining are startling. The activities concerned are cyclical. Is that cyclical?
Psychical.
Psychical. Thank you.
Psychical.
Psychical throughout.
That's it.
The shifting of the center of imagining is not brought about by spatial travel, but by a change in what we are aware of. The boundary of the world of sense is a subjective barrier. So long as the senses take notice, the eye of imagination is deflected from the truth. We do not get far unless we let go. This lady let go with immediate and miraculous results.
Okay, excellent. So the important key nuggets from this. Firstly, never would you have made anything if you had not loved it. I mean, the whole point of us having a desire is that we love the thought of having it, whatever it is. And to make the state of alive, one must become it. So that's that unification that he talked about. Now, as we know, Neville talks a bit in religious terms, and the bit that really jumps out at me here is we must be the state to experience the state. So in the case of relationships, because that's a really big hot topic, it's like the reason so many struggle is because there is a state of unlovedness, a state of loneliness, a state of anxiety, a state of feeling unwanted, a state of feeling that you don't matter and that you're not important. So when you are in that state, the external world reflects back to you the evidence of that. You feel there is no one that loves you. You feel that you are not important. You feel that you're not wanted and you feel rejected. And that's when the neediness kicks in. So the work is not to get from being by yourself to being with an SP, a brand new relationship or whatever. The work is to go from feeling and getting good at feeling unloved to loved, because love is within you. You think the relationship will give you the feeling of love, but if you think that, you've got your ladder up the wrong wall, because that will only sustain you for a period of time. And that's why people often crash and burn after the honeymoon period, and that could be 6 months, it could be a year, could be 3 weeks. It doesn't have to be the same amount of time. But when people are looking for love on the outside and they are looking to get love from the relationship rather than give the love they have to the relationship, then it crashes and burns, because the person gets very tired of you draining their battery and looking. And I find what I hear a lot is people looking for reassurance about how they look, looking for reassurance, like in terms of how many text messages they get. Look at me on my photo on Instagram or whatever. You know, the social media, I think, in a way, social media is not the problem. Social media has just put a magnifying glass on the problem, that the people were already like that in the first place. It just gets amplified because you see how people respond to when they don't get what they think they should get on social media. So, but social media is just the reflection of what people feel in the first place. So what Neville's saying here, and I'm going to go over it again, we must be the state to experience the state. If you want to have a wonderful relationship where you feel loved, all you got to do is get really good at feeling loved. And when you do that, wow, you will see the love around you. And it's simple in theory, I know. But when you felt unloved from childhood, to try and feel loved, that's no easy feat. But I can tell you, it gets easier and easier with practice. And the interview that I just did recently with Marilyn and her partner, Eric, she pushed him away because of her neediness. She worked on learning how to feel love and generate that and stop looking to him to get it. And now he wants to marry her. So she's changed it. So it's not about the other person. It's about you not being good at something. And it's all right to not be good at it. I mean, wouldn't it be good if they taught us this at school, but they didn't? You know, instead of bloody isosceles triangles and equilaterals, which, I mean, how often did you use that in your lifetime? You know, this is the stuff they should have taught us. So, although I must say, I did use an isosceles triangle when I did my imaginal scene of going from Sydney to London to the south of France. So it did come in handy once, Yvonne. I can see you laughing. So it is such a funny thing, isn't it, to look at how good am I at this? How good am I at, if I want the most amazing relationship ever, if I want the most incredible job where I bounce out of bed, how good of a state am I in to be of service in a company, to be of energetic pleasure for someone to be around? Because when you're depressed and anxious and feeling needy, you're not a pleasure to be around. As hard as it is to accept that, you're not. So, and I'm not saying that, you know, if you feel that way, that you got to lock yourself away and not see anyone. You talk to your friends or you talk to your family or whatever, and then you work your way to feeling better and better and doing things that make you feel better and better, so that you become eventually in time a beautiful, loving, radiating being. And as you do that, you know, men show up, women show up, opportunities show up. More than one company will fight for you or want to be with you or want you to work for them, whatever it is. It's all a response to you and your energy, all of it. And once you get that, you're very mindful of your energy when it drops. I know many, many people that I coach, they often show up and they say, I'm exhausted. The energy of exhaustion is very low vibe. It's very, I haven't taken care of myself. It's very self-abusive, really. And sometimes we have jobs that do that to us. Or you've got, you know, too many animals or elderly parents, too many kids or whatever, and you're outputting too much and you're not able to put back in. But you've got to work out how to stop the leaks. You got to stop the leaks in the boat and get better at, how can I conserve my energy? How can I build my energy? How can I look after myself? And the more you do that, getting into a state of love is easier and easier. Okay. Numra, you have a question? Just unmute yourself first.
Hi, Agnes. I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah.
My question was basically that as someone who hasn't really ever felt like 100% secure in any situation, how would you like go about trying to like attract security towards yourself or trying to feel secure?
Attract feeling secure?
Yeah. In
Well,
like
you're
in your
not-
relationship or in any situation.
Well, you have to work on the self-love. You don't feel secure. It's a lack of self-love issue. You feel
I kind of, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of, sorry, I kind of like, I'm someone who kind of got out of like an abusive marriage, and it's been a year and I've really been working on self-love, and I think I'm at like a relatively much better place because I'm able to
Okay.
identify, you know, why it happened and why I allowed it to happen, stuff like that.
Okay.
But at the same time, I just kind of have this nagging feeling like if it happened and I attracted that to myself, like what's to say I won't attract something like that to myself again?
Well, we attract where we're at. So, you know, I think there's so many different types of abuse. And it's like, okay, if I really love myself, I will, firstly, again, it's going back to setting boundaries and then removing yourself, especially if people are abusive, if they're drunk or whatever, and you're standing there on the receiving end of it. It depends. You work on the self-love, yes, but you do not allow yourself to be abused because you're the one that's standing there. As a child, you couldn't get away because you were too small to know, you couldn't take off and look after yourself. As an adult, we are the ones that choose to stay there. So you ask yourself, okay, I'm working on my self-love and that's improving, but why am I still allowing myself to be abused? And ask yourself the question. And, you know, I know sometimes people have said, look, I have no money, I have no job, and I have to live with this person because I have no roof over my head and I have no money. So the first thing is to get empowered and get a job and get to the point where you're no longer dependent on that person. So there are levels of how to get away from abuse. So again, it's the victim that attracts the perpetrator. Unfortunately, they're a match. They're a match. It's not a good match. It's not a match you want to be in, but it's out of balance, but it's still in balance, if you know what I mean, because the energy of a perpetrator and a victim go together, you see. So it's getting to the place where, one, you stand up for yourself, two, you get very quick and moving away when people are like that, and three, you empower yourself so you don't have to be dependent on that person at all. And if you do that and you work on your self-love, you will stop attracting the abuse, because it's like the abuse unhooks itself from you when you get empowered.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
No worries.
There's another thing, like I would like want to talk about like how you would like sort of go about getting people who just you don't vibe with or you don't like out of your life, like just attracting them away somehow.
People that are no good to you and you want them to go away, is that what you said?
Yeah, or like people returning in your life. I do have this like subconscious fear that like I don't know, someone in from my past who was abusive towards me will somehow like come back for me. I don't know, and I just can't shake that feeling, and I don't know how to like go about it.
I would, Numra, have a really strong look at the Ho'oponopono playlist like we were talking about before, because you've got to clear the part of you that feels victimized. It's a victim fear. And I understand that when you've been victimized, you are afraid of stuff coming back. So while you work on the self-love, I think there's actually about there's an 8-hour Ho'oponopono and a shorter one, like about 20 minutes. Use them as you can to clear, set an intention and say, okay, I really want to clear this being a victim and being victimized and being abused. I just really want to clear that. Set the intention before you do the Ho'oponopono to work on that particular thing. Do it a lot. When those thoughts come up about, oh my goodness, what if this person comes back and does whatever, work on the Ho'oponopono immediately when those thoughts come in, and you're just clearing it. Because if you stop watering that plant, then it stops growing. Okay.
Thank you so much. This is really insightful.
God, good conversation today. Really interesting questions, and just, yeah, I mean, this is all life, isn't it? It's applying this to get relief from life and get relief from things that are challenging, you know? I mean, we all go through stuff. That's where we're all, you know, we're all on an even playing field, that we all go through things, and some things really unpleasant. But the good thing is we can focus our way out. Once we know what causes the thing to come, because of what we think and feel, then we can work on dissolving that so that it just drops off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Nisha, do you want to keep reading?
Yes, I can do. We got to.
Okay, let me see. We must be in the state of the possibilities of shifting of the center. Oh, the lady let go with immediate and miraculous results. We were just about to read that story.
Yes. So thank you for the golden key. It has released my brother from the hospital, from pain and probable death, for he was facing a fourth major operation with little hope of recovery. I was very concerned and attempting to use what I had learned about my imagination. I first asked myself what my brother truly desired. Does he want to continue in this body, or does he desire to be free of it? The question revolved itself over and over in my mind, and suddenly I felt that he would like to continue remodeling his kitchen, which he had been contemplating before his confinement in the hospital. I knew my question had been answered, so I began to imagine from that point. Attempting to see my brother in the busy activity of remodeling, I suddenly found myself gripping the back of a kitchen chair I had used many times when something happened. Then suddenly I found myself standing beside my brother's bed in the hospital. This was the last place I would have wanted to be, physically or mentally, but there I was, and my brother's hand reached up and clasped my hand tightly as I heard him say, "I knew you would come, Joe." It was a well hand I clasped, strong and sure, and the joy that filled and spilled over in my voice as I heard myself say, "It's all better now, you know it." My brother didn't answer, but I distinctly heard a voice say to me, "Remember this moment." I seemed to awake then, back in my own home. This took place the night after he had entered the hospital. The following day, his wife telephoned me saying, "It is unbelievable. The doctor can't account for it, Joe, but no operation is necessary. He's so improved that they have agreed to release him tomorrow." The following Monday, my brother went back to his work and has been perfectly well since that day. ... JS. Not facts, but dreams of fancy shape our lives. She needed no compass to find her brother, nor tools to operate, only the eye of the imagination. In the world of sense, we see what we have to see. In the world of imagination, we see what we want to see, and seeing it, we create it for the world of sense to see. We see the outer world automatically. Seeing what we want to see demands voluntary and conscious imaginative effort. Our future is our own imaginal activity in its creative march. Common sense assures us that we are living in a solid and sensible world, but this so seemingly solid world is, in reality, imaginal through and through. The following story proves that it is possible for an individual to transfer the center of imagining to some greater or lesser degree to a distant area, and not only do so without moving physically, but to be visible to others who are present at that point in space-time. And if this be a dream, then is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Seated in my living room in San Francisco, I imagined I was in my daughter's room.
Nisha, I might just pause.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I was trying to talk. I realized I was muted. The interesting bit here in this story is, firstly, the thing that I think is really important that's not really said out loud, but she said at the beginning of the story about, does he want to continue in this body, or does he desire to be free of it? So it's really not imagining for people, not imagining things for people unless you're sure. Don't override for someone. So she knew when she checked out how she felt about her brother. She really honestly asked herself the question, does he want to be still here on the planet, or does he want to go? And she said no. She thought, well, I felt like he'd like to continue remodeling the kitchen. So she got a sense and a feeling that that's what he wanted. So be mindful of that when you're imagining for other people, that you're sure what they want for themselves, and then you can proceed. Okay, so that's the first thing. And also, it's the bit where Neville says, seeing what we want to see demands voluntary and conscious imaginal effort. So seeing what we want to see, whatever it is that you want to experience right now, it demands of you to voluntarily and consciously imagine with effort. It's an effort. It's easier to sit home and watch Netflix and eat a bowl of popcorn than it is to go, I'm going to switch off the TV and I'm going to spend 30 minutes imagining what I want, because I know once I get to sleep, I get to bed after I've watched Netflix, I'm going to be too tired to do my imagining. So it's making this, as he says, a conscious effort. And, you know, it depends on how much time you have. It depends on how much pain you're in, how much effort you usually put in. But the more you put in a bit of effort, like say you have your dinner and you go, okay, I really want to watch that movie on Netflix, but you know what? Let me do my 30 minutes or my 20 minutes even of my imaginal scene before I get the remote control in my hand. And I'm going to do that for 20 minutes before, and I'm going to get good at remembering to do that 20 minutes before I watch the movie. If you do that, your 20 minutes over a week is going to accumulate to over an hour that you've done it. 3 nights gives you 60 minutes if you're doing 20, you know, and that's quite a good effort. It's good conscious imaginal effort. So just have a think about, okay, am I good with making the time, or am I lazy to put the time aside for it? And if I do want the results that I say I want, is 20 minutes out of a 24-hour day really that much to ask? So, but it's all choice. See, this is where the free will comes in. You choose what you want to do, and you end up choosing how much effort you put in, and then you see what results you get. So it's all up to you. And it can be, once you get the results from one thing, I can tell you it becomes a bit addictive, because you go, wow, I just got that. That's amazing. What about, you know, let me apply it to this area. Let me apply it to my body. Let me apply it to finding a new job. And I know CW's in here. CW, you are the one that sent in that wonderful story that I read out. It's putting in the effort. And that story of CW's, where she talked about her manifestation, she put in the effort to feel free. She put in the effort to enjoy the feeling as she went walking. And it's go and do the walk, generate the feeling, sit on the couch, imagine the whatever it is for 20 minutes. Get into that feeling of, I've done that. I've practiced my mental diet. This is the mental diet. Part of the mental diet is how you use it for imagining, and part of the mental diet is what you do in between imaginal scenes. So it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. Okay. You may continue reading, Nisha.
Why, thank you, lovely Agnes.
Oh, I love this book. Isn't it just the best book ever? Oh my God.
It's so much better when we have someone like yourself helping interpret it, because if I'm on my own, I'm like, I have no idea what on earth I'm reading. So,
well, you know what? I've read this book, I would say I lost track at about 100 times, because I got it in the 90s when my friend gave it to me. Now, in those days, there was no YouTube. So we spent, like, the book is full of highlights because we had no one else to talk to about it. It was just her and I. So because every time I read it, I would, if something was a golden nugget, and every time I would read it, the book would light up to me differently. So it's like, I know the bits that are highlighted here are the bits that were the most amazing bits that I used to manifest what I do for work, my amazing 10-year relationship, my traveling from Sydney to London, you know, being able to be the right weight or whatever. It's like every part of my life was because of this. And this was, if I had a Bible, because I'm not religious, This and Florence Scovel Shinn's 4 books in one, they were my Bibles. And it's like when I read this to you, it's like it throws me back to the power, which it's almost like that Lord of the Rings, you know, it's like it opened up, this open sesame, and I walked into this world that I had no idea was possible. And I hope that it becomes infectious for you, because yes, it's a bit wordy. Yes, he's a bit, you know, you read something and you go, what? You know, like so many parts of Neville are like that. But if you can pick out the gems within the story, and this is the point of doing these sessions, is for me to help you see the gems and then just pick out that bit and then go and apply it to what you've got going on, then that's enough. So yeah, anyway, continuing on.
Thank you. We appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, so seated in my living room in San Francisco, I imagined I was in my daughter's living room in London, England. I surrounded myself so completely with that room which I knew immediately that I suddenly found myself actually standing in it. My daughter was standing by her fireplace, her face turned away from me. A moment later, she turned and our eyes met. I saw such a startled, frightened expression on her face that I too became emotionally upset and immediately found myself back in my own room, my own living room in San Francisco. 5 days later, I received an airmail letter from my daughter, which had been written on the day of my experiment with imaginal travel. In her letter, she told me she had seen me in her living room that day, just as real as though I were actually standing there in the flesh. She confessed she had been very frightened and that before she could speak, I had vanished. The time of this visitation, as she gave it in her letter, was exactly the time I had begun the imaginative action, allowing, of course, for the difference in time between the 2 points. She explained that she told her husband of this amazing experience, and he insisted that she write to me immediately, as he stated, "Your mother must have died or is dying." So I have to laugh as well, because it's like she goes on to say that like she is you know, she's shocked and she's scared and all of a sudden she's excited. I mean, this woman cannot pick one option, can she?
It's so funny. I love the guy's interpretation.
Your
Your
mother
mother must have died.
But I wasn't dead or dying, but very much alive and very excited by this marvelous experience. ... MLJ. Nothing can act but where it is, with all my heart. Only where is it? Thomas Carlyle. Man is all imagination. Therefore, a man must be where he is in imagination, for his imagination is himself. Imagination is active at and through any state that it is aware of. If we take shifting of awareness seriously, there are possibilities beyond belief. The senses join man in forced and unholy wedlock to what were he imaginatively awake, he would put asunder. We need not feed on sense data, shift the focus of awareness and see what happens. However little we move mentally, we should perceive the world under a slightly changed aspect. Awareness is usually moved about in space by movement of the physical organism, but it need not be so restricted. It can be moved by a change in what we are aware of. Man is manifesting the power of imagination whose limits he cannot define. To realize that the real self imagination is not something enclosed within the spatial boundary of the body is most important. The foregoing story proves that when we meet a person in the flesh, that his real self need not be present in space where his body is. It also shows that sense perception can be thrown into operation outside of the normal physical means, and that the sense data produced is of the same kind as those which occur in normal perception. The idea in the mother's mind which started the whole process going was the very definite idea of being in the place where her daughter lived. And if the mother really were in that place, and if the daughter were present, then she would have to be perceptible to her daughter. We can only hope to understand this experience in imaginal and not in mechanical or materialistic terms. The mother imagined elsewhere as being here. London was just as here to her daughter living there as San Francisco was here to the mother living there. It hardly ever crosses our minds that this world might be different in essence from what common sense tells us it so obviously is. Blake writes, I question not my corporal or vegetative eye any more than I would question a window concerning a sight. I look through it and not with it. This looking through the eye not only shifts consciousness to other parts of this world, but to other worlds as well. Astronomers must wish they knew more of this looking through the eye, this mental traveling that mystics practice so easily. I traveled, is that is through, right? Not throw. I traveled through.
Through, yes.
Okay, thank you. I traveled through a land of men, and a land of men and women too, and heard and saw such dreadful things as cold earth wanderers never knew. William Blake. Mental traveling has been practiced by awakened men and women since the earliest days. Paul states, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. 2.core.12. Paul is telling us that he is that man and that he traveled by the power of imagination or Christ. In his next letter to the Corinthians, he writes, test yourselves. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? We need not be dead in order to enjoy spiritual privileges. Man is all imagination and God is man. Test yourselves as this mother did. Sir Arthur Eddington said that all we have a right to say of the external world is that it is a shared experience. Things are more or less real according to the extent to which they are capable of being shared with others or with ourselves at another time. But there is no hard and fast line. Accepting Eddington's definition of reality as shared experience, the above story is as real as the earth or a color, for it is shared by both mother and daughter. The range of imagining is such that I must confess that I do not know what limits, if any, there are to its ability to create reality. All these stories show us one thing, that an imaginal activity implying the wish fulfilled must start in the imagination apart from the evidence of the senses in that journey that leads to the realization of desire.
Beautiful. That's so, it's just powerful, that mother-daughter. I was thinking while you were reading, I thought, gee, I might try that on my mum and see if I can show up in her flat in Sydney. Say, hey, did you see me? Oh. The thing I really love that in this whole, I didn't interrupt because there was one particular bit that I think is really powerful. The senses join man in forced and unholy wedlock to what? Let me say it again. The senses join man in forced and unholy wedlock to what? Were he imaginatively awake, he would put us under. So basically, whatever you've got your eyes on, it's like it fuses you and binds you. He calls it unholy wedlock and forced, like you've been forced to get married. But it's like as soon as you lock eyes on something that's unpleasing to you, you've bound yourself to it. You've stapled yourself to it. So, we need not feed on sense data. We need not be fixated with what we see as being unchangeable. And that's why we have a reaction, because we see it and we go, oh. But if you just went, oh, that's just temporary, let me focus on what I want, and you pull your attention away from it, you might shut your eyes. You might be on a bus and you saw something and you go, okay, well, that's not to my liking. You shut your eyes, you revise it, you imagine what you want, you look out the other window and you detach from what you saw, Or perhaps you got a text, again, something not to your liking, shut your eyes, switch your phone off, and then revise what you would have preferred to hear. That's using your creative power. And these stories today were very much about people using their imagination to basically break that unholy wedlock, the one that you've been forced into because you get fixated with what you saw, and then you have a massive emotional reaction to it because it's unpleasant, and then you stay gridlocked there for 48 hours. Then you talk to your friends about it, then you take it to work, then you have a bad experience with your boss where they want you to do way too much that day when you're already not feeling great, and then it creates a domino effect. You must use your mind to pull away from the unwanted. And the better you are at doing that, the smoother your life will go. And it is a skill, and it is a skill you will improve. And the more you read about how people did it, and we were probably about halfway through this book now, and we've read many different stories about it. It's like, okay, well, how do I apply that to my current situation? So we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to call CW. Thank you, Nisha, for reading.
Hi,
Yes.
to everybody. So I was gonna say, like, when someone said that they were having trouble feeling delusional with their manifestation.
Yep.
Just for me, when I was doing it, I never felt delusional. I felt very intentional. Like I had set like in my testimonial, like I set the intention when you said you were doing this course. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this course. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do what she says, and I'm going to call in more abundance. It was I made the choice. I made the decision. My life is going to change. And so I made that. And I wasn't like I was ignoring the 3D. I just gave the 3D no power to affect how I felt. That was really more of what it was. I was just like, I'm not going to give my bank account number the power to make me feel bad, or the power to make me think that, oh my God, I'm so horrible, I attracted this into my life. No, that's just where my conscious was. So that's what I manifested, and that's okay. And the way I got there was, I don't know if you remember, but this was weeks ago when we were talking about imaginal acts, and you said, well, maybe when you go to bed, just do the Ho'oponopono prayer. So I started doing that, and it was letting go of the self-criticism that, like, oh, I attracted this into my life and I'm so scared I'm going to attract more lack. It was just like, no, if I manifested it, then I can unmanifest it and I can manifest something else. Just like you said, taking back the creative power, you know, through intentionality, not so much delusion. Like when I was walking and saying I'm free and all this, I didn't like delusionally think that. I was intentionally calling it in. So that is really what it was, more so than
lovely. I love how you said that. It's like clarity.
Yeah. And it's like you said during the class today, you know, when it hurts enough, or you get to the point where it's like, okay, I've had enough of this.
That's it.
It has to change.
Yes.
You know, so when you get to the point where you're just like, all right, I'm done being stuck. What do I have to do to be unstuck? And then you make that choice. So it's not about being delusional, and it's not about criticizing yourself. It's just about taking your creative power back.
Yes, that's it.
And
well
really
said.
with
Nicely said. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That's really, really, I like how you've really got like a deeper understanding of the layers of it, and then you specifically use the intentionality to get to where you wanted to go, and then it showed you the result. It responded to your intentionality.
Yeah, I was like, this is changing, and I've decided. You know, it's like Neville says, you know, you're the operant power.
Yes.
You know, that's an affirmation I say every morning now. I'm like, who am I being? And I'm like, I am the operant power of my reality. I always get what I want. I feel good. I love myself. And then from there, because it's really, you're creating, like, I don't usually use the word like attract. Like, I don't feel like I'm attracting anymore. I feel like I'm creating something. And if I'm the creator of something, then it's from my attention, right?
Yes.
I feel like if I'm attracting, it's like I don't have the power. It's just, this is just what's coming to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
when-
really, if you creating versus attracting, everything is already created. It's like the books on the bookshelf. You just pick that book to read, but that doesn't mean that all the other books cease to exist. You just don't read them. They're dormant.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Yeah, they're still there. You just didn't select it. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So you're selecting. This is really not even creating. It's not creating in a way, it's not attracting. It's the power of selection.
Yes, because you're right. Because it's like it is already done. That because you're right. Neville says creation is done.
That's
So
it.
you're right. I'm not creating. I'm selecting.
That's it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice one.
Selecting. And that's
Yeah.
that. Oh, sorry. Now I'm like thinking about it. Like, and like today when he was like, what are you, keep your eyes steadied? That's, isn't that the selection? Like keep your eye stayed on what you're selecting.
Yes.
There it is.
Yeah. Stay the eye, stay the eye. It's such a funny, weird use of words in our 2023 language, but you can see what he means. You hold your gaze, you hold steady, you hold secure, you don't waver.
Yeah.
That's what holding, stay the eye means. So yeah, nice one.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to call Jesset and then we will finish after her question. Jesset?
Hi again. Sorry, I just want to go real quick. I know we've got
That's okay.
a few
All
minutes
good.
left. Mine's more of a comment.
Yeah.
Really exciting. I have to just say this. When I read this story, of the woman who is able to remote view her daughter in another continent, it lit me up on fire because this has happened to me multiple times. And I thought for a long time, I would, with my crazy and my delusion, we're talking about the delusion and the crazy. I have seen things. I've had dreams the same night. My mother's had it, the same dream. I've had all kinds of experiences like this. And it's those that are in the living, not those that have passed on. And I thought it was an amazing gift because what it was doing was saying the same thing. Imagination creates reality. If you can focus in, it's like I could almost see the energy of the other person, what they were doing, what they were thinking. It's to the point where I don't know if you would call it remote viewing or telepathic. It's a little bit like the whisper technique you do in your meditations where you're sort of infusing. But I just thought when I read this, I thought, wow, okay, he documented some kind of what people call mental travel.
It's like Google Earth.
Right.
You go right down into a spot and it happens through intentional focus.
It's so detailed when it happens. I can actually have those show up, and I've been visited before, and I've tapped in and I'd say, what is this? Oh, they're just thinking about you. You're picking up on the energy. So it's like maybe some people are downloaders, very good. Their antenna is very bright and they can sort of download the energy, but some are a little bit easier at uploading, right?
That's it.
You have to practice the other when you're trying to do the imaginal act of uploading, like she was talking about, uploading the desire of what she wanted to feel free. And then now she's transformed into that desire.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just had to throw that out there, Adolph. This is amazing. I have countless examples, which I will not go into because we've got to go. But when I heard this story, I thought this is just absolutely relatable,
profound.
Beautiful, and it's definitely real. I've experienced it. It seems crazy, but it's real. Yeah.
Well, Jesset, if you join into the next session and you want to bring it up and talk about it a bit more, feel free, because I think it's like opening the trap door.
Sure.
It's wonderful and really interesting. So I'm more than happy for you to, next session, hop on and share a bit more. Okay. Someone's just asking something about when is the next session, I think. Let me just check that before we go. How often do we do these? Nisha, we do these once a month. This was number 6, and there's another 6. And it is the first Sunday of the month, except for December, because that fell right near Christmas or something, or New Year. No, it was the New Year's one we had to change because it fell like on New Year's Day. But yeah, it's the first Sunday of the month, but I will announce it on a separate YouTube. So, because you need to get a link to keep the trolls out. I change the link every month. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope that gives you some food for thought of how to apply this and expanding your creativity in terms of creative selection, like we just mentioned before. So feel free to unmute yourselves and you can say goodbye. And I will see you as always in the next session for those of you that want to join us. Lots of love, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It was
Bye.
amazing.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.